Hey, everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Resume with my guest today, the 19th Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, the founder of the Bass Group, Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, retired Joe Bass. Joe, thanks for being on the show today.
Hey, Scott, thank you so much. First off, it's always a great time to spend time with you. Two, when you're doing that countdown, 30-second countdown, we're going to have to work on what kind of background music that is. Like my team knows, like, I love to listen to music right before we get ready to do something. We're going to have to work on what we're listening to.
So what that is, ladies and gentlemen, that's constructive feedback. That's what you want. And to be fair, prior to this, we were just talking about good music, and I don't control that. But I tried really hard to keep a straight face when I came on because it is a bit cheesy. I agree. But counseling statement taken. Joe, great to have you here. This hour goes by so fast. I want to dive right in. And I expect at some point we'll start getting comments from folks. So ladies and gentlemen, if you have comments or questions for Joe, please put them in there and we'll ask them. But until then, what have you been up to?
So much. So it's fantastic. For many of you know, I transitioned from my position in the Air Force on the 8th of March, which was pretty awesome. It was International Women's Day. It was also my 31st anniversary in the United States Air Force. And from March to now, I'll tell you, it has blown by. We had to move out of the Erie house, and then we were in a temporary place until we could find another place. We're still in Northern Virginia. My daughter graduated high school. Wow. I turned 30 years old again, like all the things. And I've also had to transition and learn what that means after 31 years in the service. And I really tell people my whole life, because I'm a military brat. So I served as a military child my entire life, joined the United States Air Force, served. So all I knew was putting on my boots, right? And kind of chugging along. And so it's been a journey. A very great one. Like, I love what I do. And I love the aspect of being there for my family, but it's been such the journey that I had to kind of figure out, what do I do? Who am I? And so I did a lot of work, ahead of time, just thinking about that, which then I've been able to kind of put into play. If I can, what I'll share is just a couple things that have helped me in this transition. I know you didn't ask for that yet, more so just what am I doing? But what I do want to share is I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew what I wasn't going to do, if that makes any sense. Like, I knew the things I didn't want to do going into this next chapter in life. And so with that said, I knew that I would be in a better position if I made sure that I continue to have identity outside of the uniform. That helped me in transition. And so having the identity of being a spouse, being a mom, being a sister, being a daughter, being a friend, really helped in the transition. And then the three things that I'm focused on doing right now and what I do are only things that I love to do, things that I'm good at, and things that still make a difference. Yeah. And so in the time that I've retired from the Air Force, I'm a strategic advisor to the president of Columbia Southern University. Go CSU. I'm doing a lot of nonprofit work with Robert Irvine Foundation, Mighty Hero Homes, focused on eradicating homeless veterans, and then also with the Military Women's Memorial. Lots of other stuff, but my biggest, I think, accomplishment in the past several months is pouring back into my family.
Yeah. And that's so important, because you can't make up for lost time, but you can be present in the current moment. And I have found, we all make sacrifices in different ways. Some decide to get out early to be with their family, and so they may not be able to achieve the rank that you made, or others continue on and then they can invest later. But we all have to make those sacrifices. I see, especially parents, single parents, that those challenges they go through. So I appreciate you talking about that. You used a key word there, Joe. I want to pull this word out. You talked about the journey. because it's not, you don't transition one day. It's like you don't read a book and suddenly you know all of history. I have found a lot of our peers, a lot of veterans in general struggle with this. And I try to tell everyone it's a journey. Like, I'm very eager to meet my 80-year-old self. I can't wait to meet that person because, you know, all of the wisdom I'll have at that point. What do you think? You know, what have you found in your journey? Maybe some things that you weren't anticipating, so others that watch this know to anticipate that, or what has surprised you as you have gone into retirement and then and continue to go through this journey.
So specifically the journey of retirement and now, what surprised me?
Yeah, specifically.
I will tell you, I feel like I'm learning something every day, Scott, especially again, when you look at somebody as tenured as us. All we've known is the military to some aspect. And so we've had the opportunity for so many years to just wear a uniform, to get a paycheck every 2 weeks, and to be told where we're going to live and what we're going to do and all those things. And so now coming out, you know, some surprising things to me. Well, one, I actually really love retirement. I didn't think I was going to love it this much. I mean, I'm being honest with you. I've had people come up to me and say, no, Chief, like really, really, you can tell me the truth. I'm like, really, really, I love retirement, but only because I can say, and you know, in my heart of hearts know that we left it out on the field, right? Like we did, I did as much as I personally could. I tried to develop everybody that I could around me. And so, so that surprised me. The other thing that surprised me was how involved and very quickly I would get into the welfare of all service members, right? Like and when I say that, I mean, like, when you're airman for life, right? You see my shirt bleeding blue. I'm always going to bleed blue. I'm always going to, actually, I will always bleed
purple. Wounded warrior on.
I will always bleed purple. But I didn't realize how quickly I was going to be able to get in some of the spaces that I've been in where I could continue talking about the welfare of today's service members, their families, and veterans across the board. And so that has been surprising to me of how much opportunity there is. And, oh, by the way, you don't need to be a Chief Master in the Air Force retired to be in that space.
Right.
I've met so many hundreds, if not thousands of people who just love our military deeply and are committed to moving the ball to make things better for our military and for veterans across the board. That's been an amazing surprise to me. And also learning, you know, I've told people before that I could probably be the biggest critic on a lot of things. And sometimes you'll hear people talk about the VA, or now that I'm retired, all you hear is the VA. When I was all you heard about was the Air Force. But now you hear about the VA. Let me tell you, when I actually do the research and study on what does the VA offer, they actually offer a whole lot.
Yeah.
You got to actually do the work to dig into, find out where, you know, what resources are available to you and I, and find those things out. So those are just some of the things that I've learned in this space, but learning every day.
Oh yeah. I mean, you and I have had texts and calls. We're all over the place and exchanging business ideas, or what are you up to? And I'm just really proud to see all that you're doing. Mainly because you've done it, in my opinion, better than I have, with balance. And we'll get to that in a moment. You know, we got Miss Lewis here who's telling us, you know, hello from Delaware in the Philly area. She's saying hi to you. Z, I don't know, you know, Z was a teammate of mine at Space Command.
He's a smart man. I don't know anything about him, but he's got to be brilliant.
He's above average. No, I'm kidding. I love Z. He's my good teammate. But I will say, in terms of everyone I've ever met that has done a transition, nobody, in terms of my perspective, has done it better than this guy here, Jay France, who has got his new book out where he talks about the Pacific Coast Trail and his hike he's done. And I wish I could do that. I just can't leave my daughters and wife for 4 or 5 months right now. But
I've got his book. Let me tell you, like,
I do too.
I wish I could write as good as Jay. Like, Jay, can you write my book? Like, I mean, he's an amazing, brilliant orator in that he shared his story in such simplistic terms that anybody's going to want to just get those golden nuggets.
Yeah.
From his hike. Like, it was awesome.
It was awesome. We'll get him on the show at some point to dive through that and move on and talk about it. But so, now you are the former Chief Master in the Air Force, but you're also a current founder of the Bass Group.
Yes.
You retire, and I imagine, you got to hide your cell phone because it's probably ringing nonstop with offers and opportunity. How do you weigh all of those? Because you can certainly have, you could be sitting on 20 boards and all these other things. What's the decision matrix for you in terms of, I'm going to say yes, or I'm going to say no? And what is the Bass Group? What are you focusing on right now?
Yeah. So a couple things, as I mentioned, it was very, very easy for me because I wrote these things down before I retired, that I'm going to stay true to some founding principles for me, which is I'm going to only do the things that I love to do, the things that I'm good at, and the things that make a difference. And so when those opportunities started coming my way, and they did, I'll be honest, and you get a lot of advice from a lot of people, and everybody tells you don't say yes to the first thing, right? And all those things. And I'm listening to all this advice, but I really use those three things as filters. And there were some opportunities that I passed on, but I'll be honest with you, what I've learned to do is to not necessarily say no, but to say not right now. Right.
Yeah.
Like, because you never know when you're going to change your perspective, and you never want to close that door. You never want to burn that bridge. But right now, right, I've got to give back to my family, and here's where my headspace is. And nobody's typically going to fault you for that. Right. And so for me, my husband's retired Army. We are very fortunate and blessed that we have the opportunities of choice. And so I use those three things as a filter on what I will say yes to and what I'll say no to. And if it's not making a difference, by the way, and I don't feel real good about it, I don't do it. But what I do now, and Scott, you know this because we talk about it all the time, I love to pass on an opportunity to somebody else. It may not be right for me. It may not be the right time, but it may be for somebody else. Shame on us if opportunities come our way and we don't take the opportunity to pass it on to somebody else, especially somebody within our circles that we know that will deliver it and do a great job. Be careful what you put your name to, by the way. But it gets back after that abundance mindset that I think we all really need to hone in on some more.
Yeah. You could clip that, what you just said there. That is the key thing, is it's one, it may not be for you right now. And there's nothing wrong with passing that opportunity on to others, right? Until we have 0% veteran, quite frankly, until we have 0% unemployment, we should always be looking to help one another out. And I know a lot of those causes, to include veteran homelessness and others, are really, really important to you. And I commend you for your passion there. Hey, so I was just up at AFA, and as I'm seeing Jay France put stuff in here, I'm mindful of the fact that right now a lot of our former teammates are in the Pentagon for the DCELC, which was a conference, an event that you and I attended many times, and I love all of them. But I'll be honest, I don't miss it. I'm really happy that Jake Simmons and others are in there now doing a great job, and I trust that they're doing great. But I got to hear at AFA the current Chief Master in the Air Force give his remarks, the Secretary of the Air Force, like all of the senior leaders, Chief Master in the Space Force. And there was a theme there. And it starts with Cha and ends with Ina, and laser focus on the mission. And so I'm going to ask you a question. And as I say this, obviously, if you're in uniform, you got to be focused on readiness and preparing for what's next. And however you're doing that, whether you're maintaining aircraft or you're flying aircraft, whether you're infantry or special ops, all of that. I'm not asking this in terms of, to take their eye off the ball from the mission. Yeah. But for those that are preparing the transition or may be retiring in a few years, what advice would you give those individuals? Because at some point, whether they do 4 years or 40, we're all going to get out and move on. What would you tell them?
Yeah. So first, thanks for caveating and saying first, you've got to keep your eye on the mission, right? Like we can't have, our military is smaller than it's ever been, and we can't have folks that are retired while on active duty, right? And so,
Yeah.
so yes, take care of the mission. The other thing that I would say is this: you have to fortify and cultivate your relationships. If you do not take care of your relationships and you assume that they're going to be there for you when you take this uniform off, like you could be wrongly assuming. So what I would say is never pass up the opportunity to take care of the people who matter to you most. And so take care of your relationships. The other aspect is, you've got to really do some mission planning on your finances. How much am I going to need to be able to still feel comfortable and to be able to do the things that, remember, I kind of laid out my 3 bins or my 3 buckets. What is it that you need to be able to lay out your buckets and feel comfortable with that? And then, so take care of your family, understand your finances. And then what I would say is you've got to keep a tribe of resources around you. And I love that me and you were doing this, Scott, because I knew you long before we retired.
Oh yeah.
And it's interesting how our paths crossed so long ago when you were a DIA and we could continue to have that relationship so that we can continue sharpening each other and providing resources to each other and all of that. So keep yourself surrounded by people who can just sharpen your sword and make you a better person.
Yeah. Amen. And what I would offer to add on to that, my observations, is, and Mike Quinn yesterday talked about this in a post on LinkedIn, that we may be going through a time where the workplace environment is a little more challenging and harder to find opportunities. And so for veterans, a lot of folks, service members in uniform, are told, hey, when you get out, you'll get this 6-figure job, you'll get that, it's guaranteed. I don't care if it's your grandmother getting ready to hire you. Until that contract is signed, continue to network. And even after, I think it's important to network, because I have talked to a couple of very senior leaders in the last 3 days that had a job. And unfortunately, that job's no longer there. And I've gone to bat for one of them, trying to get him an opportunity, at least an interview. But you just never know. And so while we're very lucky today to have things, you don't know what tomorrow's going to provide for your health.
Yeah.
And your point about money is so important. Know your exact dollar. I was at a Courage Awards in DC a few weeks ago for the Wounded Warrior Project, and we were recognizing everybody. And RG3 is our MC. It was a great event there. And this lady next to me is in the Army, and she's getting ready to transition out. And she likely has an opportunity. And I know the person that's likely going to bring her on board. And I said, hey, you just never know. Continue to network until just in case. So that was important. And the same thing with finances. Know what your number is. Don't be ashamed of it. Everyone has a number. It could be much smaller if you don't have a lot. Maybe it's just you as a single person. But if you're married with children and you're in DC, wow, that's going to be a high number. And just own that and know what that is. So thank you for bringing up that point. Go ahead.
Let me bring up one other practical piece that I would tell folks who are still currently wearing the uniform, or just anybody.
Yeah.
Like, never burn a bridge.
Oh yeah.
Never. Like, I know that seems so intuitive and so right. Like, but I'm serious. Like, one day you will take this uniform off. Like, one day all of us will take this uniform off. And we want to, and oh, by the way, your professional reputation will go before you, so will your personal reputation. And we would hope that we were decent human beings, right? Like that we can't make everybody happy, right? But if you treat people decent, if you treat folks fair, if you focus on never burning a bridge, I think you'll be okay. Just a practical thing that I wish I knew, because I know when I was a younger NCO, I used to probably burn a lot of bridges. and I had to learn the lessons.
I have been known as in my younger days to come off the top rope as well. And there's a saying, just because you can say it doesn't mean you should. Right. So
Good.
taking pause for a moment to think through things, especially in an email or digitally, just maybe it's time to walk away and be the bigger person, sleep on it. So
Yeah.
solid advice there. Again, Joe, I have found in retirement, there are folks that quote unquote were in a much junior position to me. And I'm talking to a lot of them because they've got great ideas. And I have said this before, like who I spend my days with in my tribe are just people that are focused on winning. And there are certain things you and I have talked about that I think, when it comes to actions in uniform, how to act, that you and I have brought with us also in retirement, right? I won't speak for you, but like, for example, I'm not going to get caught up in sharing my thoughts on the political issues going on right now. If someone wants to talk to me about a policy issue or national security, how we should be ready, we can have that conversation. But I think it's dangerous given my position, and I'm only going to speak for me, I won't speak for you, to chime in there because oddly enough, some people actually listen to me. And it's weird that they do. And I appreciate that. But the moment I start telling people who to vote for or why this candidate is wrong, and I've actually met both of them. But again, that's besides the point. I think you damage that professional reputation and erode your personal reputation. I don't know if you want to dance on that one at all.
No, I agree. I think that, whether you wear a uniform or not, leadership is leadership. It's the ability to inspire people and influence people, right? And so I don't take that lightly. And I realize that I will always be a leader, and that has a responsibility to it.
Yeah.
What I will say, and I'm very much like you, Scott, as it relates to, I'm very cautious in the things that I'm saying, and thinking on the political realm. What I will say, and I think this is fair to say, like our nation needs people of character to stand up and lead this nation. Yeah. Oh, by the way, some of the best people I know, the people of character, have all served in the military. And so I know that there might be people out there who are like, I wonder if that's right. Like maybe I should, I don't know, right? Like our nation probably needs an overhaul as it relates to politics, period, right? But when I think about the people of character that just would be phenomenal leaders at the city level, at the local level, state levels, and national levels, many of them have connective tissue with our United States military. So I would encourage each of you to just think about how you might serve, right? And service is something, and it means something different to all of us. But I do think that our nation needs a national call to service. Doesn't just mean in the military; it can mean other aspects. And so I always vote character.
Yeah, I love that that mindset. I have some sand behind me from Iwo Jima and Guadalcanal, and then that book there CZ gave me. It's the Constitution, and whatever I have in my office, I can always look at that and be mindful of being patriotic. And I follow the Joe Dunford model, and he's on my Mount Rushmore of leaders of just the best ever. And he simply said, I will never talk about, he was the chairman. So obviously he heard things. And he just simply said, I'll never talk about it. And I just admire that so much. I admire him and many other leaders, yourself included, because I think that, there's things that you and I have been privy to, time with members of Congress and whatnot. And you want them to be able to have open and frank conversations and not have scripted words. Maybe they made a mistake with a word, and we don't need to torch them for that. The ones that I have met on both sides individually have always been, I think they love this country and they come from it, serving it in a different way. And that's up to American citizens to decide on how to vote. But let me jump out of that unless you want to touch on any more. I want to get to Raymond's question here. Because Raymond asks a question that you and I have discussed pre this live stream event here, but many times before. And that's the mental part of transition. right? And Raymond, brother, you make a great point. You can be prepared financially and the family change, right? I had to move an entire family across country and everything. We're fine. But the mental part, I'll be frank with you. There's been a couple times where I have felt what I can only translate as a little bit of depression and sadness for an unknown reason. I have no idea why. Like, I have everything I ever want and need. And I've found success, but I've found some sadness a couple times. Can you talk about the mental part of transition, maybe for you, where you're willing to go there? And then, from your observation as a former SimStaff, you probably saw a lot of airmen and veterans that might have been struggling with it. What are your thoughts on this question?
I did. First off, Ray Riley, by the way, is a great American. So I'm really glad that you're spending some time with us. Hey, and Scott, I think you were tracking this. It was probably a week after I retired, or it might have been the Monday after I had my retirement ceremony. I put a post out about what it felt like on that particular day. Yeah. And what I talked about was, man, while I felt like transition assistance was helpful to me, I don't remember it talking about the mental or emotional aspects of transition. Like, we learned a lot of stuff, how to do your resume, how to do this, how to do that. But I don't remember at one point, and I could have not been paying attention. I don't remember during transition assistance, the TAPS, I don't remember anybody saying, hey, this is going to be tough mentally. Like, you're going to have to figure out how to detach or what. We didn't talk about any of it. Yeah. And so that led to kind of broader discussions where everybody was chiming in on that piece, which led to, by the way, some bigger discussions with myself and some senior leaders in the VA that I very much appreciate because they were listening. But I'll tell you, when somebody asked me, hey, how do you feel? I said, I feel strange, right? Like, I almost feel like, because all I've known was the military, yeah. I felt like it took me personally, by the way, probably at least 6 to 8 weeks before I started to feel a little normal, because within that 6 to 8 weeks, I almost felt like somebody was going to give me back a phone and a computer and say, psych, come back to work, right? Like it
stop loss.
Felt like you were on leave. And so it felt weird. It didn't feel, for me personally, it didn't feel bad. It felt weird. Yeah. I will say that there were parts of the transition that I felt probably even more challenged. Like, I had, let me talk about kind of the mental aspects of it. Like, I did pretty well in the last several years of my career of meeting with the chaplain monthly. Like, that was non-negotiable. I met with the chaplain monthly. I was like, chaplain, I need prayer. And that was my mental wellness piece every month. Because I was holding on to some things. And quite frankly, when I started going through my VA appointments and going to mental health, I was like, I can't unpack yet. I have to wait till I'm retired. Right. And I know that's not completely healthy. And that is kind of counter to what they tell you. But I was unpacking with the chaplain, but I couldn't just go there because I didn't know what was going to come out, because we all have our own challenges and issues. And so that came. And again, I was really appreciative that the VA was there to provide that level of support. And then there'll be periods of, it's great because I'm with my family. And then there'll be periods of something else. And so there's always going to be something. I think the important aspect to know is it's all normal. Yeah. However we all translate that, the challenges we go through, the important key is get help. And there's nothing wrong with it, whether it is a mental health counselor, whether it's a, marital counseling, whether it's the chaplain, whether it's a friend, whatever you do not deal with it alone. And that's what I've learned. And that's what has helped me through, to include talking to other veterans to say, hey, this is a normal feeling.
Yeah, it was really hard for me, you can't see the picture, but over my shoulder, there's a picture of me seated with Lieutenant General Vince Stewart. And then that person right in the corner, that's Colin Powell. And we were having a private meeting. And when I got the call to retire, I asked General Vince Stewart to be my retiring officer. And God bless America, like the next day he was dead. He passed away. And that, that has been sad for me. I've unfortunately had many teammates, either that I knew very well or that I know of, have died by suicide. And that issue is just really breaking my heart. And the only thing I know to do is I never look back. And I don't know if that's healthy or avoidance, but I never try to look at old posts or I just always, I'm focusing forward. That might not be healthy again, but
Yeah.
I'm mindful of what Ray talks about there, of the mental challenges. So yeah, thanks for going over that, and thanks for sharing that, because people see the Chief Master in the Air Force. I thought you had a cape and you were Superman or Superwoman. You're telling me that you have feelings too. That's interesting. We didn't know that.
Yeah. A whole lot of them. It's funny when I was selected in that position, I'll never forget. Some people are like, what's it feel like to be the Chief Master in the Air Force? And I'm like, it feels the same, right?
Yeah.
Like you're still who you are. You just now have more responsibility that you shoulder, but you have, again, a team around you to help get after the things that we need to get after. But yeah, I could talk forever, by the way, on some of the aspects of being Chief Master in the Air Force. I think there's a perspective of, man, like life is gravy, and look how glamorous it is, traveling around on a C-21 and you have people working for you. Like, let me tell you, it probably the most challenging 4 years of my career. The lack of sleep, even though I preach sleep, right? Like, but to some degree, right? Like the lack of sleep even though I had my Oura ring and all those things, the aspects of just, what you're privy to and what you see and being in the rooms. But what helped me, and I think all of us have to be able to tap into the help, was having a really strong, fortified network of people around me. And also making sure that my mindset was there and that I focused on the long game, not the short game, that I was resilient, and that you don't get deterred by the critics, because you can never run from the critics, right? There's going to be critics in whatever you do. Whenever you stand up for what's good, there's going to be critics. Whenever you're, especially in this information space, and I could talk about it, the information digital domain forever. We all have to figure out what that balance is, but I wouldn't take it away for the life of me. The honor and privilege of a lifetime to serve in the position that I did. But it was not easy.
Yeah. And I want to dive into that here in a minute. I find it fascinating when people online badmouth the Tom Brady's or the Tiger Woods, as and so to your point, there's always critics. And you've shared, the famous quote about being in the arena, and how valuing that experience, but also valuing the individual in there who occasionally is going to slip up and make a mistake. And I think that's important. I want to say hello to my friend JG, Justin Goldman. And mainly, I've known Justin for a long time, but he just had a recent event in his family. His father-in-law, who just came to America from the Philippines, just got his green card. And so JG, congratulations. JG is just a great guy. Literally for years now, everywhere he goes all over the world, he'll send me a postcard. And I love that guy. And we share stories about baseball. He's a big Cardinals fan. And so it's good to see you, JG. Let me talk about this issue here. And I don't bring it up a lot, mainly because the one time I did, I had people on both sides telling me, hey, I don't need you to stand up for women. And then why don't you stand up for women more often? And I was like, good Lord, what do you want me to do here? I just stand up for teammates. How about that? But you were the first and the only woman to be the service SCA. And certainly the critics will apply their own logic to how that happened. I know you, and I know you earned it. And I also know the former Chief Staff of the Air Force, current chairman, who was not going to pick someone just because they checked a box. But that had to make it even harder or put the microscope on you a little bit more, did you ever think, man, I got to walk on eggshells. I cannot get this wrong, or ... What were your thoughts?
Yeah.
Walk us through that as being the first and only female.
So a couple things, because I am an optimist, right? Like I really framed it in the sense of, man, I got to do my job and I've got to do it well because I have folks counting on me. And
Yeah.
and what's interesting is when I was named the 19th Chief Master in the Air Force, I'll never forget. I was in Biloxi, Mississippi at Keesler Air Force Base. It was June 15th, my birthday, when I got told I was named on the 19th. And immediately, the phone started ringing off the hook. The news articles started coming out on she's the first female. She's the first Asian American, like all these first, like we never named us as such, right? It was
Right.
already being labeled as such. And the phone's ringing off the hook to my exec there. And my exec's like, Chief, they're calling. They want to know what kind of Asian are you? Like all the things, like
Oh my God.
media's going crazy. My sister calls me the next day and she's like, dude, you're in Wikipedia. And I'm like, I'm in Wikipedia, like in 24 hours. And I didn't put myself in Wikipedia. So somebody else put me in Wikipedia. Then I got my dad calling me, by the way, who's a retired Army warrant officer. He's like, hey, kiddo, can you fix Wikipedia? Because they have me as a colonel. I'm like, Dad, I got more issues going on right now because it started blowing up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Female. And my PA team, by the way, as I got in the position, had to really work with me because, I kept saying, I don't want to be known as the first female. And they're like, Chief, you have to embrace it, right? At the end of the day, you are, and you don't want to take it away from the people who are inspired by that. But what I remember is, right, like I'm who I am, which I'm a person who appreciates character, commitment, competency, and those are the things that have brought me here. So I got to fall back onto the lessons that my mother told me when I was 18, which is do your job and do it well. So even as a Chief Master in the Air Force, I've got to do my job and do it well. But Scott, I have to take a minute to just share again, it wasn't all peaches and cream.
Yeah.
That was the first time, that first week when I was named, that I learned, do not read the comments. And if are like Ron, my husband, had to tell me, guard your eyes and ears, because one of the first comments I read on a national from a national media outlet that said, Chief Bass was selected as 19th Chief Master in the Air Force, served in the Air Force 27 years. One of the comments said most of that time must have been on her back. And I was like shocked. Like the first time ever where I'm seeing blatant disrespect, blatant misogyny. I didn't even really think, to be honest, that misogyny was a thing until it started coming at me for no reason. So it was just shocking, to say the least. The things that my public affairs team has had to witness, the photographs of men, and we'll just leave it there, that have come through media or to my inbox in the Pentagon. No other, I would suspect, probably male, has had to deal with those things, to include threats and stalking and all the things. But regardless of that, it goes back to that first principle that I talk about. You've got to play the long game, and you've got to have a good tribe. And my husband was good to say, babe, you've got to, guard your eyes and ears and focus on the things that you've got to do, and never let the critics or the crazies deter you, because you've got a job to do. So, and I would do it over and over again for my girls and for yours, Scott.
And I appreciate that so much. And matter of fact, I don't know if you hear them. They're running around upstairs. So apologize to the audience. But actually, I don't. They're crazy. They're running around. I have found that most people, and I don't know anyone that did that, although you confided in me. And I remember you had told me about the back comment and some of the things. And I dealt with a smaller version of that with this Marines United scandal years ago, because they found a photo of me and my wife, and they made comments about her. And I know as a male, as a Marine, as what I call a meat eating assassin, I wanted to do some things. But what am I going to do? Just go hit everybody? I mean, so you just have to realize that those individuals probably have something really bad going on in their lives. They're really insecure, because winners don't focus on losers. Winners focus on winners. And those people that are doing those types of things, something's wrong in their own mind. And one, they don't have enough time they got enough time on their hands that they're not, working hard or spending time with their family or loved ones, that they've got time to send you quotes or comments or whatever. And two, I worry about their own stability. So it's sad that people say that. I have been in the meetings with you where we've had closed doors with the Secretary of Defense, like the most senior leaders possible there are at the White House, all those things. And never once did I ever think you don't belong. I always thought wow, I would write down what you would say. There were some people, I'm like, how the hell did this guy get here? Occasionally, but usually at the DSELC level, like these individuals, 30 years, have all earned it regardless of gender status. And I was honored, when I left Cyber Command to have the first female combatant command CISO, and Cheryl Lyons replaced me, who I just got to spend a few days with, and just a brilliant individual. So, I can't speak for everyone, but I'm sad that happened to you. But you taught us a lesson in grace and how you handled it, because most people never heard of it. By the way, I never want to see those photos, but it's deplorable. It's sad. And it speaks a lot about your character that you were able to continue on. So thank you.
Absolutely.
So I'm sorry. There are a lot of airmen today that look up to you. There are a lot of members in the Joint Force that look up to you, and they someday want to be like you, specifically to be maybe the next Chief Master on the Air Force. If I'm in the Air Force now on my first term, and that is a goal of mine, which God bless you if it is, that's a great and honorable goal. What do you think they should be thinking about? What should they know? How should they prepare? Obviously, prepare might be the wrong word, but what should they be doing? Because I can't imagine you thought, 2 years in, hey, I'm the 19th Chief Master on the Air Force. I know I was trying to survive my first 4 years, but what advice would you give those individuals?
Yeah, my advice would be the same thing that I shared earlier, which my mom gave me, which is do your job, do it well. I would also say that you've got to communicate, right? Like as a supervisor, I always appreciated when my subordinates shared with me what their goals, dreams, and desires are, so that I could help coach them into what that might look like, and to ultimately just help them, perform to their highest potential. And so what I would say is, do your job, do it well, communicate, and a couple other things like, one, like focus on learning something every single day, like focused on trying to figure out how to be your best self. Who I am today, like, is not who I was when I was a young E4. Like I had a lot of growing to do, and I counted on the leaders around me, both, upward and lateral, to be the folks to help develop me into who I was. But I was focused on learning something every day, trying to be my best self, taking myself out of my comfort zone. And so I would tell anybody who's listening, right? Like you are not going to grow and be your best self if you just play around in your little sandbox and stick within your comfort zone. I used to be, by the way, scared to death to speak in public. I'll never forget my speech at ALS. I think I almost cried and threw up at the same time. And so because I was so nervous, I told myself, I've got to figure this thing out. And so I forced myself to start to be a public speaker. Like I remember starting to go to church, and I raised my hand. They were like, we need a secretary in the church. And the secretary is the one who reads the announcements. I raised my hand and what am I doing? But I forced myself into these situations where I would have to publicly speak. When opportunities came and nobody else wanted to volunteer for certain deployments, I raise my hand for those deployments. And so I would say, like, do your job, do it well, learn something every day, communicate with your supervisors and those around you so that other people know what your aspirations are going to be, and then get yourself out of your comfort zone so that you can become your best self.
Yeah, that advice is so solid, and it even translates into the business world, the private sector. Because if you want to grow in the business world, you have to have multiple skills, and you got to be able to have critical thinking. You've got to be able to anticipate, communicate everything you say. I ran into an individual at AFA who was going to take the stage and share some words, and this person let me know that they were a bit nervous, and I was able to talk to them privately, and I try to emphasize, when you're nervous, that is a gift. That is letting you know how much you care, and all you have to now do is get the audience to see how much you do care. And most people that are kind professionals who are sitting there listening to you, they may see you're a little nervous, but they respect the fact that you went up there, because most people, their first 20 times they took the stage were a nervous wreck. I remember 1993, I had to give my intel brief to a general officer named Van Riper, who is well known in the Marine Corps. And really all I had to do is read the weather to him. I almost peed my pants. I mean, I was so nervous. Now, literally, my wife can come in here and say, hey, they need you to go talk for an hour about whatever. And I can do that because I've gone through the sets and reps like you talk about. And I actually thoroughly enjoy it. I love to do that. But everything you talk about, I hope people will listen to that and listen to it again. If you're gonna improve, you got to grow. You got to go through that stress, and stress can be a really beautiful thing. So thank you for bringing that piece.
Let me give two more things that I always say, and they both start with C. Competence, like you've got, and goes back to do your job, do it well, will make you a competent person. You will not go anywhere without being competent. And then two, that competence will give you a level of confidence.
Yes.
And confidence is a good thing when honed appropriately with humility. Yeah. Right? There is nothing wrong with being confident as long as you understand the art of still being humble.
Amen. Amen. We got about 10 more minutes here. And folks, if you have any questions for the former Chief Master on the Air Force, Joe Bass, please put them in there and we'll ask him. But I want to talk to you about one of the challenges I found in uniform and a little bit out of uniform now. And that's this idea of balance. And, I can't imagine how hard it was for you. You're all over the place. You were traveling a lot. How have you found your own balance now that you've retired? Are you doing well? Now, I kind of know the answer to this. I don't want to give folks the answer, but I'm slightly jealous of some of the cool vacations you've got on too. But how are you doing, Joe? And are there some things that you can improve on in retirement in terms of balance?
For sure. So I think I'm doing well. I'd give myself a B minus only because I'm a critic. I'm a big fan of, for the Air Force, we call them comprehensive airman fitness pillars. And so I'm a big fan of the physical aspects, the social, the spiritual, and the mental aspects. And I feel like if you have all four pillars evenly taken care of, then you will be a more balanced person. I think that I'm still doing well from a balance perspective, mostly because I'm, trying to take care of myself physically, mentally, socially, spiritually. If you look at my calendar, by the way, I have this trusty calendar, and the first thing on the calendars for me, because I have the opportunity, is to put family time down. And so I guard my family time. I take vacations. I've got, few girls trips that are planned, some family trips to see my oldest kiddo. I went and saw my mother for her birthday. So I'm putting all those things down, and the white space I have left is where I do some of the work stuff. So I'm figuring out how to balance and figure out that level of harmony. I want to give you a shout out, Scott, because as I mentioned, we learn and we get through this together. And I remember when I first retired, I reached out to you to say, how do you do this? And you shared with me that, you try your best to block off, I thought it was Fridays,
Yeah.
to be able to just give back to your family. I've done the same thing because it's easy to get sucked back into it. And so as much as possible on Mondays and Fridays, I try to really limit those days so that I can really pour back again into the family that has sacrificed so much. I mean, if I served 31 years, again, my children for their entire life
Yeah.
just got a fragment of me. Think about if all of us just think about how much our families really get of us in terms of hours, actual hours, it is a fragment. And so this is my opportunity to balance. And so I'm doing well. I'm still in the gym, just not as early
Yeah.
anymore. So I'm still getting my PT on. Yeah.
Yeah, I would then give myself a C minus. I got to do better. I have aspirational goals and I know what to do, but I tend to be a bit ridiculous when it comes to work. I might need some counseling there again from you, because I've found hours creeping in on weekends and Friday. So I'll get better in that. Hey, we got a couple of questions, and I want to try to get these in from Justin Goldman and Jacob Sargent, my old teammate, real quick. And so, as it relates to your role as a sim staff in conducting key leaders engagements and senior listed leaders from our allies and partners, how do you think about the role? Now, again, I got to see firsthand how you did it. I got to see recently the current sim staff and SimSIF just met with, good Lord, 40 or 50 allies and partners. But your thoughts on that question?
Critical, right? Like we can see from the war that is going on in Ukraine, some lessons learned. And the reason why Ukraine is still in the fight, the reason why they're able to do the things that they're doing right now is because they have a strong NCO core. And so our ability to help spend time with our partners and allies and strengthen each other is key. Like it's non-negotiable. And so in fact, I was invited by Dave Isom and Indo-PACOM to spend time at the CHOD conference to help moderate the SEO portion, and the other SEACs come together to focus on some really tough varsity level challenges that they have. And so huge, non-negotiable, we've got to do it and we're better for it.
Yeah. And, I remember when you had the SimSAF from Ukraine, how powerful that was. I believe he was a SimSAF. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. I remember that. You mentioned Dave Isom. Dave does an incredible job and how important that is in the Pacific Theater. So it is huge. And the SEACs have done that as well. So JG, it may not always get the press that some of the chairman and rightfully so, but at every level, at every echelon, it's important. And even at Space Command, when I was there, one of the first letters I got was from a teammate in Japan who I never met because of COVID, but he sent me a letter congratulating me. And so those relationships are solid and critical. Last one here from Jacob Sargent. So he talks about what is something we wished that we emphasized less. And I'll go first to give you some time here, Joe. When we invested our time while still in uniform. This is really easy for me, and I've thought a lot about this. When you're in certain positions of seniority, you're often brought along to meetings because your boss goes to those meetings. And the answer to this is that you go to those meetings because that's the way it's always been done. I wish I actually pulled out of some of those. Many of them were important, and it was an opportunity to advise my boss or to hear from the staff, but there were some that I found myself just not needing to be there. And I could have been out with the team. I could have been traveling somewhere. I could have been engaged in my office, but I could have been doing something else. Hell, maybe seeing my kids. But I chose often to do everything I could always. And I found myself in more meetings than I needed to be. Your thoughts, Joe?
Hey, two things, Jacob. One, I wished I would have put my computer away more. It was interesting. I was stationed at the Pentagon for the first time. My kiddos were teenagers. And I've always heard my kids anecdotally say things like, you're always working. But one day it actually really hit me because I was coming home from work as standard, and I did what I always do, which is flip open my computer. As soon as I'm home, been at work, right? Like 8, 9, 10 hours a day, come home, flip on my computer, and my daughter says, "You're always on the computer." For whatever reason, on that particular day, it hit me. And I was like, man, I am always working. And so that was a very pivotal point for me. It was one where I learned, you know what? No computer, it's 17, 1800. Like, I am going to give back to my children again. Very limited time. You have, maybe 3 hours, 4 hours at best with your family every single day. And so I decided from that day on, I'm going to get better at this work-life balance, harmonizing thing. And so I, as much as possible, would quit. Now, if you talk to them right now, they'd be like, she's lying. But I really did do my best to do that and to give back to my family from at least 1700 to 1800 on for the rest of the evening, and take care of that. So I would have done that. The other thing that I would say, one last thing, is I wish I emphasized less personally the need to always have to win. Right. Like, there is a great book, by the way, that I think everybody has to get. And it's called What Got You There Won't What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
Yeah, great.
And why I love it is in one of the very first couple chapters, it actually has a do not do list. I need more do not do's, because we have so many here's what you need to do to become a great, amazing leader. I actually need the here's what you need to quit doing. And one of the very first things is the need to always win. And this gets back to having a level of emotional intelligence, not burning bridges, understanding which things do you have to win at, so that, again, you can continue fighting the good fight, right? If you expend all your energy on wanting to win all the time, you're probably a jerk. And so that was me at a certain portion of my career. I probably would have gotten a sense of emotional intelligence a lot quicker.
Yeah, I love that, and I think that's a good personal reflection on yourself. You're always learning how to improve. The one thing we got to make sure we always win on, certainly. And I always talk more about war winning than war fighting. I want us prepared for war winning. But those are great points, Joe. Hey, I'm going to turn this over to you here in a moment. Joe Delaney, thank you, sir, and it was good to talk to you a few days ago on the phone. Thank you for chiming in. Joe, I'm going to turn this over to you in a moment for closing comments, and anything you want to share, how people can reach out to you, how do they do business, great vacation spots, whatever you want to talk about. What I'd like to hit on is 2 points. One, again, everyone, thank you for being a part of this show. My goal here is to continue to bring you people in the veteran arena, and that could be spouses as well. I'm looking at that, that talk about things that translate to veterans, service members, and spouses. That's what this show is going to be about. And if you think you know who would be a good guest, or you think you'd be a good guest, reach out to me. I've had some people that want to talk about their pet projects. That's not what this show is about, and it never will be for me. It's always going to be about service. Last point, and then I'll turn over to you, Joe, is I always talk about a book I'm reading. This one is a short book. Unfortunately, I was not wise enough. I put it down over here on my desk, so I'm not going to grab it. But it's called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. And it in some ways gets at the exact point you were talking about, but it is mindset and mentality. And the reason I bring that up is because I always hear from veterans that, hey, I'm going to get a job here, or I'm going to take this coaching class. And I have just had really audacious goals where I want, some of these things that are out there today, I want my version of to be the equivalent. So like, I want to be like a Tony Robbins or some of those others that teach leaderships, and I want them to work for me. I don't necessarily want to work for them. So I'm always in this mindset of how do I, do more and take on more, not just settle for those leftovers that oftentimes we think of as enlisted members as getting those crumbs. So that's just my perspective. As a Man Thinketh, a really good book. And it has a bit of a spirituality to it as well. So again, Joe, thank you for being a guest. Let me turn it over to you for closing comments and thoughts.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Always love spending time with you and sharpening each other. So I appreciate you giving me this opportunity. I would have quite frankly been mad if you didn't. So a couple things. Let me just start off with a couple books. I read this book earlier last year. It's called Brief. But I would encourage everybody, right? Like, it was a game changer for me. And the reason why I appreciate it is it teaches you about brevity. And that is something we all need. What I just got done reading is the 5 a.m. Club. Probably because I've shifted my time frame from 5 a.m. to about 6:37. And so I'm reminding myself of why the 5 a.m. Club is pretty important. So I encourage you to take that, check that book out. Hey, I want to go back to kind of the mental health piece to this is, again, you are not alone. We are not alone. Like, we are part of this military family. We will forever be. And so never, ever, ever, ever suffer in silence. You can reach out to myself. You can reach out to Scott. You can reach out to 988. You can reach out to, anybody, but you're never alone. The thing that has kind of, I always have like little themes for every season that I'm in. The season that I'm in right now is causing me to focus on how can I be an aggressive giver? And that just when you think about that, if all of us focused a little bit less on ourselves and more on others, how can every day we find an opportunity to be an aggressive giver? Whether that's a giver of an opportunity, that's a giver of time, that's a giver of resources, whatever that is, it will cause us to shape our mindset from what's in it for me to, again, how can I be that person to somebody else? So anyway, I encourage you to do that. Hey, keep learning something every day. Thanks for spending time with us. Thanks for being the best version of you. Now and especially through the rest of this year, it might certainly be challenging, right? But I don't get excited about the challenges. I don't get excited about negativity. Instead, I try to reverse that and think about all of the opportunities. So each of us is going to have an opportunity to present the best of ourselves and to look at opportunities and to reframe what some of America might look like in the next few months into positivity. And so be that person. Thanks for spending time with us.
Jo, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.